Hello, everybody. Good evening. My name is Rhonda Burkhauer. I am a bookseller at Belmont Books, a locally owned independent bookstore in Belmont, which is just outside of Boston. I am going to have to ask people when they enter to turn off their videos. I know some people have them on. If you could turn off your videos and be sure to mute yourselves. We'll have about 50 people on the event, and it will work much better if people keep their audio and their video off. So again, thanks so much for joining us tonight for this very exciting event. We're going to hear from 4 fantastic authors reading from 3 wonderful new novels. And before I introduce our moderator, who will introduce the authors, I want to tell you about 3 upcoming events at Belmont Books. 2 are for adults and 1 is for kids. So again, I want to remind people who are entering to mute their audio and to turn off their video. So upcoming events at Belmont Books, virtual events. This Saturday, October 24th at 7:00 p.m., we are having a virtual story slam, which will be hosted by Steve Almond. So what is a virtual story slam, you wonder? A story slam is when we invite members of our community to share a 5-minute original story. For this story slam, the theme is Hexed, a Halloween theme. So our story slams are always lots of fun. This is our first virtual one. So please join us for a wonderful night of storytelling. If you're interested in sharing your own story, there are still slots for you to sign up. You can go to www.belmontbooks.com and look under events and sign up for the story slam. On Wednesday, October 28th at 7:00 p.m. We'd love it if you joined us for a great conversation between Shruti Swami, the author of A House is a Body, and Shaya Busvaneswar, author of White Dancing Elephants. And finally, we'd like to invite the kids out there to join us for our book club. We've been meeting for a few years, but we've been meeting virtually since the pandemic began. And we will meet next month, November 15th on Sunday at 1:00 in the afternoon. And we'll be reading and discussing Jerry Craft's new graphic novel, Class Act. So to register for any of these events and to find out more about them, please visit our website at www.belmontbooks.com. So now before I introduce our moderator, just a few housekeeping items. I see people are keeping their audio off and their video off, so thank you very much. But even though you're muted, we really want to hear your questions, your thoughts, ideas, comments. So please use the chat button that's at the bottom of the screen to write your questions for any of our 4 authors. We're going to reserve about 10 minutes at the end of the presentations to address your questions, and we really would love to hear from you. And we also encourage you to support tonight's authors by purchasing their books. I will include a link in the chat that you can use to purchase the books. And as an added bonus, Belmont Books has an early holiday discount. If you purchase 3 or more books before the end of this month, by October 31st, you'll receive a 20% discount. Okay, so now it's with great pleasure that I introduce our moderator, Sayantani Dasgupta. Not only is she a physician and a professor at Columbia University, she's also a children's book author. She's the author of the award-winning The Serpent's Secret, the first book in an amazing adventure series, Kiranmala and the Kingdom Beyond. When she's not writing or reading, she spends time watching cooking shows with her trilingual children and protecting her Black Labrador retriever, Kushi, from the many things that scare him. She's a team member of We Need Diverse Books. Welcome, Sayantani DasGupta, and welcome to our 4 authors.
Thank you so much, Rhonda and Belmont Books. for hosting this wonderful evening of South Asian American Kidlit, or actually literature that explores South Asia and the South Asian diaspora from children's perspectives. My name is Sayantani DasGupta, Sayanthani Dasgupta, and I'll be your moderator and host of sorts for the evening. As Rhonda so kindly said, I am the author of the Kiranmala and the Kingdom Beyond series, which is Bengali folktale and string theory based, because, you know, why not? And the three Kiranmala books are out right now are The Serpent's Secret, Game of Stars, and The Chaos Curse. The Kingdom Beyond Multiverse has a new book coming out next year called Force of Fire. And I also have something totally new, a biography of Dr. Virginia Apgar coming out from Penguin Philomel in April as part of Chelsea Clinton's She Persisted series. So that is who I am. But I am here today as a cheerleader and as an avid fan and reader. And I am here to support and celebrate our four wonderful authors. But before I do that, I want to welcome and thank all of you for being here, right, in the Zoom where it happens, as it were. I know that it's a difficult time for many of us. I know that we have competing forces, right, pulling at our time. So I just want to invite you to take a big breath and relax and say, hey, we're here for an hour together to celebrate some beautiful words, some wonderful stories, and to really enjoy ourselves. I'm also going to invite you to use the chat to think about questions that you might have for our authors at the end, and we'll try to get to all of those at the end. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to start today with a quote from the first of the Kiranmala books, The Serpent's Secret, which goes like this. We humans may not be powerful or magical, but the stories we pass on to our children can be. And in a sense, that's kind of the heart of what I think we're going to hear today, which is some wonderful, magical stories woven by four incredibly talented authors. The focus of our panel, as I said before, is stories about South Asian or South Asian diasporic characters. I know we have some students in our audience. If this was a school visit, I might ask you to tell me what South Asia constituted, but since it's a Zoom, I'll just go ahead and tell you. South Asia, of course, includes India, Pakistan, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, the Maldives, Afghanistan. I think I've hit it all, have I? Teammates, I think so. And the diaspora, of course, again, for the students who may be with us, is people who themselves or their families came from those places and maybe now live in other parts of the world, but draw their heritage from South Asia. The authors we'll be hearing tonight include Sheela Chari, wave Sheila, the author of the Unexplainable Disappearance of Mars Patel. We'll also be hearing from Sadia Farooqi, author of, wave Sadia, author of 1,000 Questions, and N.H. Senzai or Nahid Hasnath and Shannon Hitchcock, co-authors of Flying Over Water. So what I'll be doing tonight is I'll be introducing each of our authors and asking them one question. And after I ask them that one question, they're going to do a short reading. And then we'll have time at the end for questions and answers. All right? All right. So our first author is Sheela Chari. So Sheila is the author of The Unexplainable Disappearance of Mars Patel, which she'll be reading from and hopefully explaining more about, based on the Peabody Award-winning mystery podcast. Her other novels include Finding Mighty, which was a Junior Library Guild Selection and Children's Choice Award finalist, and Vanished, which was an AP/ALA Children's Literature Honor Book, an Edgar finalist for Best Juvenile Mystery, and Al's book club pick on the Today Show. I don't know if any of you know, and I don't know if Sheila wants me to broadcast this, but I will, because it's such a fabulous clip. But if you haven't seen the clip of Sheila on the Today Show playing her Veena, Please go look it up after this conversation. It's beautiful and amazing. Sheila teaches fiction writing at Mercy College and lives with her family in New York. And I have the honor of actually having known Sheila for many years and being in a critique group with her. So I'm going to tell you from inside knowledge what a wonderful and generous writer and creator and teacher Sheila is. So I invite Sheila to unmute yourself. And I'm going to go ahead and ask you a question. Is that okay, Sheila?
Yes. Hi, Sayanthani.
Hi, Sheila. So Sheila, as a novelist, what drew you to this project? The Unexplicable Disappearance of Mars Patel is based on a podcast. What was it like to novelize something that existed in the world as a podcast?
Thank you for your question, Sayanthani. I want to first say thank you to Belmont Books. This is one of my favorite bookstores in the world. I always stop to get my books during the summer when I come to visit. So I'm really happy that we're here virtually. And I'm really happy to see the panelists here. Some of them I've never met before in my life, but here we are in Zoomverse. So thank you for everybody to be here. So to go back to your question, what drew me to novelizing a podcast? In fact, I'd never heard of such a thing before. The story is actually already out there. The podcast, there are 3 seasons, they're out there. There's a fan base who know these characters. And what I liked about this story was that Mars, the main character, is Indian American. He's an Indian American boy. His mother is from India. His father's identity is unknown, but he is a lot like the kinds of characters that I like to feature in my mystery novels. He's a detective. He's a risk taker. He likes to pull pranks. He thinks out of the box. And so he was the kind of character that I wanted to really write. And I think it's important for us to see Indian American kids in these roles, and that they have, at least for me, when I write my stories, my characters do share my cultural background. I'm an Indian immigrant. I'm a first-generation Indian immigrant, but it's not central to the plot. It's part of who they are, but the stories are really about their friendships, their personalities, and the mystery. So those were sort of the things that always draw me, and this character of Mars really appealed to me from that point of view. And then as I started writing this novel, I had 2 audiences, actually. I had those who listened to the podcast and those who haven't. So I wanted to create material that was new, but also familiar. So what I'm going to read for you now is actually from chapter 5. And just to give you a quick synopsis, the story is about these missing kids missing from all around the world. And it turns out that they are on a top secret mission, which Mars eventually uncovers, that has to do with this mysterious inventor named Oliver Pruitt. But the first person who goes missing is Aurora Gershowitz. And why is she important? Because Mars has a huge crush on her. Okay, and so I thought it would be fun for the book to include the time that they met. So I'm going to just read really quickly from chapter 5, and you can hear what Aurora Gershowitz is all about. Okay. A promise is a promise. The first time Aurora had talked to Mars was on the first day of 6th grade, when she told him he was sitting in her seat. Move, she said. That's my chair. I saw the seating chart. Mars looked at her slightly terrified. Were they supposed to have assigned seats already in English? It didn't matter. Mars got up readily and moved his things off the desk because Aurora Gershowitz was scary. Not scary like Clyde Boofsky or Scott Bain, who were big and tough but total dumbheads. Aurora was scary because she was pretty. She'd been in his 4th and 5th grade classes, and everything she did seemed to be an act of defiance. From her purple-tipped hair, to her spiky wristbands, to her bright red lipstick when no other girls were wearing makeup. She was also really smart, which meant she would finish her work way before everyone else did and wander off into the hall until someone brought her back and said they'd found her opening a locked door, gluing shut and open one, turning lights on and off, and generally being a nuisance. As Mars stood there with his notebook and pencil, Aurora seemed to reconsider. Actually, your chair is in front of me, she said, so you better sit there. Sit in front of Aurora Dershowitz? Wasn't that more terrifying? Mars sat down anyway, conscious of all the awful things Aurora could do to him with his back turned, make faces, shoot rubber bands, laugh at him. But then something unexpected happened. A piece of folded paper landed in his lap. It was a note from Aurora. For the next few incredible minutes, the piece of paper went back and forth between them as Misty Temple was busy loading a program on the smartboard. Why is your name Mars? Nickname. Cool nickname. And then, want to rearrange Temple's desk when she isn't looking? What do you mean? Why? To mess with her. When Misty Temple announced she was getting something from the office and would be back shortly, Mars turned around and saw Aurora grinning at him. It was a smile Mars would come to recognize again and again whenever Aurora was up to no good. They scrambled to the front desk, pencil case moved to the right, papers to the left, books piled on the chair. The rest of the class watched with mild interest. It didn't occur to anyone to stop them. Then, as a last thought, Mars laid the computer monitor face down. When Mr. Temple came back and Aurora and Mars were back in their seats, she stopped and looked at her desk, wondering what had happened. The worst was when she tried to get the smartboard to work and the computer screen flashed some strange blinking images of a gorilla. Then Mr. Temple became really alarmed. Did she have a computer virus, or was she just going crazy? It was a stupid prank, but that moment when the rest of the class giggled and poked one another was huge. That's when Mars got it. This was what Aurora did. She caused disruption. Live a little, Mars, she told him. Piss people off.
I love that as advice. Live a little. Irritate people. I love Jess. Thank you so much, Sheila. So welcome to all of you who have joined us in the interim. I know that Belmont Books has kindly been letting you through. Just keep your videos off and yourself muted. I love all the claps and thumbs ups happening, but do feel free to avail yourself of the chat. Write your questions and we'll get to them at the end, as well as maybe some conversation between our authors. So thank you so much, Sheila, for that little taste of Mars Patel and his life. So our next author will be Sadia Farooqi. My friend Sadia is a Pakistani-American author, essayist, and interfaith activist. She also has a very adorable cutout, lest you think that's an actual person. That's not. That's just her wonderful character who comes with her to readings. Sadia writes the children's early reader series Yasmin. That's Yasmin right behind her, published by Capstone, and other books for children, including middle grade novels, A Place at the Table, which came out from HMH Clarion in 2020 and was co-written by Laura Chavan, and 1,000 Questions, which she will read from us, which she will read for us tonight, which came out from HarperCollins this year. She has also written Brick Walls, Tales of Hope and Courage from Pakistan, a short story collection for adults and teens. Sadia is editor-in-chief of Blue Minaret, a magazine for Muslim art, poetry, and prose, and was featured in Oprah magazine in 2017 as a woman making a difference in her community. And so just as a little addendum, let me just tell you what a difference Sadia makes in our writerly community. She's always kind of bringing us together and creating opportunities and space, even in the midst of this pandemic and the Zoom and everything else, for folks to connect. So Sadia resides in Houston, Texas with her husband and children, and I'll invite her to unmute herself and say hello.
Hello. Yes, Yasmin comes with me everywhere. She is kind of like a member of the family.
Exactly. And I love seeing her over your shoulder like that. My Kieran Mala is like way on the sofa. She's been naughty. She gets to sit over there. Okay, so Sadia, I have a question for you. What made you decide to set this book in Pakistan rather than in the US, where many, I would guess, of your readers are, and also where you live? So we talked about the difference between, right, for our students, South Asia and the South Asian diaspora. What makes somebody living outside of South Asia decide to set a book in Pakistan?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of readers have asked me that because, you know, we in the US often become very Eurocentric. We want to learn about our own, you know, things going on here. And I usually write books like that as well. But something happened a couple of years ago, which led to this book. So this is 1,000 Questions, and it's really the book of my heart. So it is a book about family and friendship, and how you can find that in unexpected places. It is, it's set in Pakistan, obviously, like I said, and if you see, the cover actually has buildings from Karachi, where I grew up, and the book is set. These are actual buildings. This, for example, is the cathedral that was outside my school. I went to a convent school, and that was actually there every day that I passed by. So I don't even know how they came up with this is amazing to me. But it's my love letter, and something happened a couple of years ago. I had gone to Pakistan during the summer to visit my mom. She was having surgery, and I had taken my kids with me. At that time, they were in middle and elementary school, and they had not gone back home to visit grandparents for a very long time. So this was essentially the first time that they were really seeing everything. They didn't remember the past visits. And from the day that we landed in that country to the day that we left, it was just an explosion of so many different emotions that I was watching them go through. It was very different from what I was experiencing, because obviously that was my birth country. I was familiar with everything. It was fun for me, but I was used to it. It was not a big deal. But for my kids, constantly complaining, it's too hot, everything's too spicy. They couldn't understand the language. There was a lot of angst and a lot of, like, you know, why are we here? Why do we have to be here? We'd rather be home. But then there was also, I noticed this thing that they were drawn to for the first time. They were in a place where everybody was like them, and everybody looked like them. They could understand the language. They felt like these were our people, even though they really weren't. And so I think that for them, it was this moment over a period of time where they realized that they have some connection to this place, which they didn't really think they had a connection to. And I was just watching them and just amazed at as this kind of flux that they were going through. And I really wanted to explore that. Being a writer, I was like, well, you know what, I'm just going to write about this, because, you know, a regular mom would try to help them figure it out. I prefer to just watch and write. And so the story came about a girl, Mimi, who's Pakistani, and she goes to visit her grandparents in Pakistan for the first time. And there she meets Sakina, who's a Pakistani girl. She's a servant. And so these two girls have a connection to the same heritage, but they are so different, including not even being able to communicate properly. And it's, like I said, an unlikely friendship and learning where home is, even if it may not be where you live. So I'm just going to read the first 2 pages, which is really short, from the first chapter. It's dual voice. So this is Mimi's chapter. Mimi is the American girl. And there's chapter 1. Well, I'm going to have to put these on, which I forget because they're new. All right. Mimi, chapter 1. Summer vacation is overrated. Imagine an oven like 400 degrees. Then imagine crawling inside and closing the door behind you. That's what Pakistan feels like in the summer. Who'd be dumb enough to crawl inside a super hot oven, you ask? Good question. Nobody with brains, that's who. We're standing outside the Jinnah airport in Karachi, trying to get a taxi from a small kiosk with dirty windows. There are a million people around me, all talking faster than I can understand. And anyway, they're talking in Urdu, so I have only a vague idea of what they're saying. Mom fans herself with a parent's magazine, the blonde model on the cover all creased as she tries to keep her mom cool. I try fanning too, but my copy of the New Dork Diaries is too thick and short to give me any air. Oh, I grunt, and Mom turns to frown at me. No complaining, Mimi, she reminds me, patting my nose with her finger. That's been our rule since I was a little girl. No complaining, no matter how hard things get. Not when Dad left us when I was 5. Not when I crashed my bike in the street outside our Houston apartment at age 7 and broke my leg in 3 places. Not when Mom lost her teaching job at the Houston Art Institute last year and went on a million interviews, always returning with a smile on her tired face, saying, "It's fine, something will turn up soon." But this forced vacation in Pakistan, the land of my ancestors, this is not the something I'd been expecting to turn up. So that's just a little taste of, how one feels as a child when you visit the land of your ancestors and, what it's like.
Thank you so much, Sadia. If we have time, I hope we get to talk to you about what it felt like to write in 2 voices, right? And all those writerly choices. But thank you so much for giving us a beautiful taste of Mimi's trip, no complaints trip to Pakistan. Okay, now I have the honor of introducing 2 authors. What I'll do is I will probably introduce them together and then ask each of them a separate question. So Nahid Hasnat, who writes as N.H. Senzai, is the author of the award-winning Shooting Kabul, which was chosen as the Asian Pacific Libraries Association, by the Asian Pacific Libraries Association, as their young adult literature winner and an NPR's Backseat Book Club pick, along with Edgar nominee Saving Kabul Corner, Yalsa Pick, Ticket to India, and Escape from Aleppo, which was recipient of the Middle East Book Award honor. She spent her childhood in San Francisco, Jubail, Saudi Arabia, and attended high school in London, England, where she was voted most likely to read a literary revolution. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to say that again because I was laughing. Where she was voted most likely to read a literary revolution. See the little play on words, lead a literary revolution, read a literary revolution, due to her ability to get away with reading comic books in class. That's the funniest. Her latest book is called Flying Over Water, and you can learn more about her work at nhsenzai.com. But the special thing about Nahid today is that Flying Over Water, this book was actually co-written with another author who we have with us today. That is Shannon Hitchcock, who is the co-author of Flying Over Water and the author of Saving Granddaddy's Stories, One True Way, Ruby, Lee, and Me, the Ballad of Jessie Pearl. Her books have been featured on many state award lists and have received acclaimed reviews. Shannon recently moved from Tampa, Florida to Asheville, North Carolina. And for more, you can visit her website, shannonhitchcock.com. And I'll put those links in the chat in a bit. Okay, so I think we're going to start. Each of you will read a separate section from the book. Is that correct? Right, Nahid? Okay, Nahid, go ahead and unmute yourself if you'd like. And so I'll start with you, yes? And I'll ask you a question. Excellent. So here's the secret. I'm trying to dig up some, Shannon, between now and when I introduce you, we'll have to dig up some secret personal connection. But the secret personal connection I have with Nahid is, I just discovered it, is that Nahid wrote in my mom's edited book from 1998, A Patchwork Shawl, Chronicles of South Asian Women in America. And my mom happens to be here in our Zoom room. So the world is very small. It's all very interconnected. So Nahid, wonderful to finally meet you in person, as it were. Here's my question for you. Do you think that writing about topics like war, conflict, politics, religion, do you think that's too heavy for middle grade readers? How do you make choices about kind of the subject matter that you write about?
So I'm married to a professor of political science. And I've been lucky to have lived and traveled throughout the world, including the Middle East. And I've always found that I'm sure we all remember ourselves back to when we were like 7, 8, 9 years old, and we were in the backseat of our parents' car, that they would always talk about serious topics, but usually the kids were not involved. We weren't really asked for our opinion. But the thing is, we knew all about what was going on around the world. And I've always felt that looking at our current, social geopolitical situation around the world, we as grown-ups haven't exactly done a great job. Domestically, foreign, we tend to, get into conflicts, have a tough time with resolution. And though these are big concepts, children also face these type of issues at their own level at schools, but also they know, as I said, what's going on around the world. So I always thought if I can kind of explain geopolitics and, history and all those things encapsulated in an interesting story in a novel, I would kind of be doing my job. So I think kids are really smart. They're a lot smarter than many times we give them credit for. So in many of my books, the current one that I wrote with Shannon Hitchcock, we begin the book on the day of the Muslim ban, Trump's Muslim ban. And this is, a ban that impacted, not only Muslim Americans and their families, but also Muslims from around the world who were visiting or, coming to the US, of getting into the US. And I thought, it's the story of a Syrian refugee family arriving on that day and what repercussions that has, not only for family, but for the character Nadia herself and for, politics at large. So I find that if we can write about things in a nuanced way and put a personal face to things like, the war in Afghanistan or the current situation in India. In my book, Ticket to India, I talk about, the beautiful India history has. It's a of society of languages, of cultures, and it's how, being inclusive takes work. And that, if we don't deal with conflict, it leads to issues at all levels. So long story short, I think it's actually really important to be writing about serious topics for kids because they can digest and hopefully be better citizens of the world than we have.
Absolutely, and I have great faith in young readers. Did you want to read, were you going to read first or was Shannon going to read first?
I can read.
So, yeah, would you? Yeah, please.
Yeah. So I am going to read the first page or two of our novel. And this is from the perspective of Nora. So the story is about a Syrian refugee girl named Nora who arrives in Tampa and is befriended by Jordan, who is written by Shannon. We've written in alternating chapters. So let me take it away. So this is chapter 1. Nora, Monday, January 30th, 2017. This is the book. Down, 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 nearly 40,000 feet down. With a gulp, I turned away from the plane's small oval window and yanked down the shade. We were way, way up there, traveling in a metal tube with no net to catch us if we plummeted to the ground. Are you all right, Habibti? Whispered a comforting voice. Yes, Baba, I whispered back, careful not to wake my twin brother, Amar, who sat between us. His handsome face was smooth and carefree in sleep instead of creased in its usual frown. It's exciting, Baba grinned, this whole flying thing. I shrugged, my mind buzzing with 1,000 thoughts and emotions and fought with each other to be heard. Happiness, fear, wonder, grief. Usually I would have shared them all, talkative as a magpie, but not today. Not on my first ever plane ride of my life, where all the sights and sensations made me feel like I was drowning. It'll be okay, my love, my father said. We're here together, safe.
Beautiful, thank you for giving us that initial taste of your co-written book, but because we have Shannon here with us also, Zoom room, we get the treat of hearing a bit more from Flying Over Water from its other co-author. So thank you so much, Nahid. Absolutely, you know, I hope we get to talk a little bit more about serious topics for young readers, and also the faith that all of us have in young readers to be able to kind of read and figure out and kind of move the future, hopefully in more just directions for all of us. Shannon, I'll invite you to unmute yourself. How recently did you move from Tampa to North Carolina?
In February.
Oh, so right before. I was wondering whether or not this was happening
Yes.
during the recent, you know, kind of pandemic. So right before. All right. Shannon, I know that you've written other books as a co-author, or these other books were mostly on your own?
They were all on my own until this one.
Yeah. So what, you know, led you to decide to be a co-author for Flying Over Water with Nahid? How did that process work? And also I'll invite you to read a bit more from the book.
Okay. Well, first, let's back up a little bit. And I want to talk about the initial inspiration for the book. The initial inspiration was a friend of mine. Her daughter converted to Islam. And that made me very curious about the religion. And I started researching it. About that same time, I was in my minister's office, and there was a picture in her study, and it said, "We are from Syria. Can you help us?" And it was of a Syrian woman and her young son. And so I asked for the story behind the picture, and Vicky said, "Well, I was on vacation in Turkey, and this woman came up to me, and she was desperate for help. And she said, I didn't have anything to do but give her water and apples. It's all I had. I couldn't take her back on the cruise ship with me. But she said, I didn't forget her. And she said, I came back to Tampa, and I contacted Janet Blair, who's the community liaison for refugee services. And I said, how can our church help with the resettlement of the Syrian refugees? And so our church had set up a tutoring program and a mentorship program to help. And so she told me the story, and I said, well, I want to help too. And the way I help is by telling stories. And I said, could you introduce me to Janet Blair, which she did. And Janet started educating me about the resettlement process. And she also arranged for me to meet some Syrian girls and also a Syrian refugee family. So I did a ton of research, and I wrote an entire first draft from the Christian girls' point of view. And I started paying attention to a lot of online conversations around own voices. And technically I was own voice because I was writing it from a white Christian girl's point of view. And I was writing about a girl whose church was helping Syrian refugees. My church was doing that. But I wondered if I was following the spirit of it. And what I started thinking about was I was filtering the story of a Syrian refugee through the lens of a white Christian girl, and that it would be more interesting if that character had her own voice. But I wasn't comfortable writing in her voice because that just wasn't my background. And so I decided I needed a co-author. And I didn't know any. I didn't know any Muslim authors that to ask. And so I put the word out in my own little writing community, and they didn't know any more than I did. So what I did next was I went to Amazon, and I found Nahid. I found Escape from Aleppo, and I immediately bought the book. I read it and I loved it. And I thought she'd be perfect. She's Muslim. She's already done all the research about the Syrian civil war, and she writes middle grade. But I didn't know her personally, so I wrote a letter to Nahid, and I had my agent send it to Nahid's agent, and they asked to read the manuscript. And whenever Nahid read the manuscript, it resonated because her husband was a refugee from Afghanistan, and a church actually helped his family. But the manuscript is nothing like the original manuscript because Nahid brought all sorts of diverse characters and diverse details to it that were never in the original manuscript. So it became a much richer, better manuscript. And I've really come to think that the purpose of Own Voices is to challenge us to tell each story in the most authentic way that it's possible to tell it. And that my own manuscript became much, much better because of Nahid's involvement with it.
That's lovely. Would you read a little bit more from the book for us?
I would. So Nahid, what she read was the character Nora is on a plane and she has left Turkey where she was in a refugee camp and she's going with her family to the United States. So Jordan, who is my character, is waiting on her to arrive. I fluffed the pillow on the twin bed that would belong to Nora Alwyn, assuming her family was allowed into the United States. The Muslim travel ban had created a lot of confusion. We'd followed the news all weekend, afraid the Alwyns would be sent back to Turkey. Try not to worry, Mom said. She tucked a strand of straight blonde hair behind her ears. With a little bit of luck, they should be able to get through. I couldn't help but worry, though. I'd been moody and anxious for weeks, ever since the best day of my life had been ruined. Mom moved through the tiny apartment, straightening cushions, arranging fresh flowers, and wiping a smudge from the bathroom mirror. When our church had donated furniture for the refugees, Mom had volunteered to make sure the apartment was homey and ready for their arrival. Volunteering to help was like something old Mom would have done. New Mom had barely left our condo since she'd been released from the hospital. Until today, I crossed my fingers that this was a positive sign. Mr. Alwyn managed an award-winning hotel in Aleppo, Mom said. I'm sure this apartment will be a big step down for them. She sighed, but I bet it'll be much nicer than living in a Turkish refugee camp.
Thank you, Shannon. So we're about at 7:46, everyone, which means we have, let's say, 15 minutes to chat-ish. So I do invite all of you who are in the Zoom room and who just got to hear our 4 authors speaking a little bit about their recent projects and also reading from their recent projects to type your questions in the chat. But in the meantime, while I'm waiting for those questions, I have a few of my own. So let's just do a quick, like, authorly speed round of questions. So authors, your first very serious question is as follows. Favorite snack to write by? Sheila. Favorite snack to write by? Extra bonus points.
Chocolate, and the chocolate, I guess my kids are listening, the chocolate that they don't know about. But they won't know about it. So. Actually, what am I saying? They raid my chocolate too. But yes, chocolate and more chocolate.
Chocolate has magnesium. It's important. Shannon, favorite writing snack?
Wheat Thins.
Wheat Thins. Wow, not very chocolatey, but okay, I appreciate the crunch. Sadia?
I actually do not like eating when I am writing. I can't do it. It distracts me because then I want to eat and then my fingers get dirty and then I can't type. So, but I do drink Diet Coke. You know.
I did know this about you. I did know about the Diet Coke, but we're gonna have a talk about the food and, like, are you eating really
I mean,
a writer,
when I'm eating,
right?
100% of my attention is on what I'm eating. So
how are you a writer if your keyboard isn't dirty? Anyway, a question for later. Nahid.
I always need some form of caffeine. So either it's latte or chai and something sweet because I have a sweet tooth. So it's some form of sucrose.
Excellent. I support all of these choices. All right, let me take a quick peek in the chat and see our question askers. Is lots of wonderful, I hope all of you authors are taking a peek at the chat because there's some just really wonderful, supportive comments about all of your reads. But I don't see any questions that I'm missing. Oh, here we go. Sonia Gupta asks you all, where do you sit down to write? What is your favorite or most inspiring spot? I'll go the opposite direction. Nahid?
Okay, so I have a day job. I don't write full time, so I work in the tech industry. I live in San Francisco. And so I tend to write in the evenings, and it's on my couch with the chai and the cookies.
Balanced, I'm assuming. Very nice. Sadia?
Yeah, the pandemic has actually ended up giving me a better spot than I had, because this used to be our guest bedroom and now it's a home office that I share with my husband, who is not a good office mate. So, you know, I have to listen to him all the time talking very loudly to his coworkers on the phone. But at least I have a place, which I didn't have before. And so I appreciate that. But before the pandemic, it was always Starbucks. Even though it was noisy, I just love writing there and I got my best work done there. So hopefully we'll go back to that someday.
Hopefully someday. I know many writers like to write in public spaces. I tend to write down the dialogue of the people around me if I do that, but I know, right, many of my writerly friends are missing their public spaces. Shannon, do you have a favorite spot to write?
I do. I like to write in front of the window, looking out at the mountains.
Oh, beautiful. And how about you, Sheila? Where are you eating your Trader Joe's dark chocolates?
Oh, that's a secret, but
It was in the chat.
I know where I eat it is secret, but anyway, I am in my favorite writing spot. This is my office. You can kind of see there's my desk and stuff, and I just treasure this place. I didn't always have this office. It came to me in the last 5 years. I'm up in the attic, away from everybody. I have a window. I have birds in the window. I'm floating in the sky, and this is where I write. So.
Lovely. Actually, let me ask you we have a couple other questions coming up. I have one, question just about writing in these times right now. How has it been to both have books coming out right now when so many of us are unable to kind of have public events or, go to public events, to publicize our books in the ways, that we've been used to in the past? How's it been to promote books in this time, but also how has it been to create stories in this difficult time? I won't go around. If anyone if everyone feels like answering that one, I'll let you jump in.
I'll jump in. It's been hard, really hard promoting books, but it's been, for me at least, easier to write. But I don't know. I think it's just I have this ability to block, things and people, which my kids don't appreciate about me. But definitely my work, work is better because of that. And I've also found that writing kind of like stops me from thinking about all the awful things that are going on. I don't have time to watch the news. I kind of like just get into my characters and forget that the real world exists. So. Yeah, right. But talking about those books is hard because you just feel like it's not significant. People are going through a lot of tough times, and then you want to say, buy my book. That's hard.
No, absolutely. It is difficult. Anybody else have an answer for that? I have a couple other questions popping up.
I'm only bummed because I've never met Shannon in person, and we had a couple of dates lined up. We were going to meet at conferences and things. That is not going to happen. So Shannon, until a later time.
So here, actually, that leads me, Nahid, perfectly to the question that was in the chat, which was if you and Shannon could speak more about the process of co-writing a book together. And maybe the addendum to that question is the process of co-writing a book together in these times.
You want to go first, Shannon, since you initiated it?
Okay, well, so I told you a little bit, which was that I wrote a letter to Nahid and my agent sent it to her agent. So my people contacted Nahid's people. But then we spoke on the phone, and Nahid says it was like first date. And so we had some conversations and kind of got to know each other. I don't know about you. I was a little bit nervous the first time because I was thinking, oh no, she's going to tell me no. So anyway, we had some fun conversations. And once we decided that we were going to do it, then Nahid set up a Google Docs, and we plotted the novel using Google Docs, and it sort of became a living document. We updated it continually. We sent our chapters to each other back and forth via email, and we used track changes to to give each other feedback. We checked in about once a week on telephone, and we've still never met, although we've done several of these kind of things. But I feel like I know her pretty well.
I mean, to add to that, it was like a first date, right? You kind of like ask all the nosy personal questions and you feel each other out. And for me, in Shannon, I just found this person who had an amazing manuscript, but was so open and generous with discussing my ideas. And that's true. It's what I think really worked for us is we were really open. You bit your lip and kept silent until the other person was finished talking. And then you kind of, waited and incorporated and wove it into the manuscript that way. And it made it much stronger with both people coming into it. We're both accountants, so we're anal. And so we're both plotters. So that really helped, having those online tools to communicate and make sure, because we're writing in alternating chapters, sometimes she was way ahead of me. She was writing a couple of chapters down, but we had already set up the story so we could do that.
Lovely. Thank you both. Okay, we have about 5 minutes left, so get your questions in the chat, everybody. Okay, a quick one for Sheila. How long have you been writing this book? Asks Jenny.
Oh, that's a good question. And I'll just mention that my first book, Vanished, took me about 2 years to write. And I just want to mention it because I just see in the participant list that there are some writers who are still publishing, about to publish. And I just want to say that use this time before publication to really enjoy and write. You won't get that time again. And I had the chance to really figure out my voice. I spent a long time working out the character, the mystery. So it took me a while. The Mars book came to me with the entire plot. And so I outlined everything chapter by chapter, which was a very different way for me to write. So it took me about a year. And so it was two very different processes. And they both work, but they use different sides of your brain. But I really want to say to take your time. It's this very special time that you don't get after you're published. I think everybody would agree. I'm thinking people might agree who are on the panel. So.
Absolutely. We have a few minutes left. I want to ask another quick question because then there's a couple more involved questions. The quick question to all of us, perhaps, is what was your favorite book as a child? And I want to hop in to this one and say Madeleine L'Engle's A Ring of Endless Light. That was my favorite book as a child. I love Madeleine L'Engle. Sheila, do you have a favorite book?
Yes, same author, but A Wrinkle in Time. And I have to say that my best friend from childhood, who is here in the audience, I believe, gave me that book. So it's especially, I still have it. Actually, it's holding up my it's here. If Claire can see it, she gave me this book. This is my favorite book, and I have it for many purposes, even holding up my computer. So
Love it.
Shannon, do you have one?
Yeah, I have two. One was for a read aloud. My mother used to read aloud to me from the Childcraft fairy tale book. So I used to love for her to read the fairy tales to me. But once I could read for myself, my favorite book was called Requiem for a Princess, and it was by Ruth Author. She's a British author, and I just loved it because it had sort of a supernatural element to it. It was about a princess, and so but it was also set on the coast, And it was just an opportunity to travel to another country and another time.
Lovely. I'll have to look that up. Sadia?
Yeah, I grew up in Pakistan, so the books that I read, probably people here don't even know about them, but I read British authors because everything was British in Pakistan.
Enid Blyton, Enid Blyton,
Yes,
Enid Blyton.
yes, absolutely. Did you read her too? Enid Blyton was like my favorite. I didn't know who she was, but I loved her books. Now I'm like, well, there were only white people in those books. I don't know what was going on there, but it was a different time. And she was way older than, there weren't new books coming out at my age. They were way before that. But Famous Five and, The Secret Seven and all that. Oh, I wish I could get my hands on them. You can't even buy them here.
Oh, I bought them for my kids because they were such.
Really? Online?
Yeah, online. So we're a couple minutes. Is it okay, Rhonda, if we do finish this question and then ask everyone just to name their new projects, or is there something else we should finish up with?
That's fine. That's fine.
Lovely. Nahi, do you have a favorite book to share with the audience?
Oh, what I'm working on?
Yeah. From your childhood.
Oh, from my childhood. So two. One is Witch Week from Diane Wynne Jones.
Oh,
I
nice.
love everything she's written. And also a really great trilogy called Dark Angel Trilogy, which is written by Meredith Ann Pierce.
Lovely.
So,
Okay. Wow. And so we're just about at time. So I want to kind of honor everyone's time, but there is a lovely question from Gayatri that what new projects is everyone working on that you can, I know that in publishing you sometimes cannot, but that you can tell folks about?
Yeah, I've got a lot coming up as usual. I have the 4 new Yasmin books coming in January that I'm super excited about. That will make it 16 in the series. And then I have another middle grade novel, which is called Yusuf Azim is Not a Hero. It is a 9/11 book told from a Muslim boy's perspective, and it's dual history. So there's a timeline 20 years ago when 9/11 happened, and then one from current times. And I'm really, really excited. I just saw the cover yesterday, and it's gonna be good. And then a few things that can talk about, including a graphic novel, maybe. I don't know. We'll see.
Or maybe not. Maybe we didn't hear about it.
Yeah, I've been a secret for 6 months. How long do they want me to not talk about it? It's not fair.
Apparently a very long time. Anyone else have any new projects that they can let readers know to keep their eyes out for?
Well, I'm working on book 2 of the Mars Patel series, and we think the title is going to be The Interplanetary Expedition of Mars Patel. I can't tell you where he lands, but that's a hint that he's landing somewhere. And that's coming out next fall.
Okay. And Shannon and Nahib, anything you can let out of the secret bag?
I actually have my debut picture book is publishing tomorrow.
Congratulations! What's it called?
It's called Saving Granddaddy's Stories. So tomorrow's the official pub date, and it's going to be part of an Appalachian trilogy. So the second book that book is about an Appalachian oral storyteller, picture book biography. The second book is going to be about Jean Ritchie, who is a ballad singer from Kentucky. And the third book is going to be about Appalachian quilters. How
wonderful. Many congratulations. Nahid, anything you can divulge?
I just finished and sent to my editor my debut picture book. So it should be coming out. We are right now speed dating with illustrators.
Very nice. All right. So I thank you all deeply for being in this Zoom with us. We felt all your great energy. I want to thank again Sheila, Shannon, Sadia, and Nahid for reading and sharing their new books with us. And let's all thank Rhonda and Belmont Books for creating this space and having us here today. Is there anything you'd like to say to kind of round out our evening, Rhonda?
Yes, I first want to thank all of the authors, and particularly Sheila for cooking up this idea and contacting us. It was a really wonderful conversation and reading, and I think everyone in the audience enjoyed it as much as I did. I also want to thank our audience for coming. And I want to encourage people to support our authors here and purchase their books. Remember, there's a 20% discount at Belmont Books until the end of the month. So visit us at www.belmontbooks.com. And please, everyone, stay safe and be well. And we hope to see you in the store, hopefully sometime next year. Okay, and thank you for a wonderful moderator. You were fantastic. And we hope to see you again. Okay, take care, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the evening. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks for
Bye.
being here. Bye.
Bye.